Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over Tesla stock. Let's go over what is happening to the stock. Being fairly volatile despite it trading within a range. It's still, being fairly volatile within that range. So we'll talk about it, what I see moving forward and all of that good stuff. So as per usual, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice and I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you enjoy my analysis, etc., I do have a membership section on YouTube. That link is down below where you get access to all my intraday thoughts, post updates, technical analysis, options flow, mainly on Tesla stock, but sometimes other stocks as well. Or for $5 a month, you get access to all that, plus NVIDIA daily updates as well. But yeah, let's jump right into it. Tesla closing the day up ever so slightly, up about 0.5%, we'll say, compared to the market. We'll say maybe that's very small, minuscule outperformance, but nothing too crazy. But especially considering it did have a 2-3-ish, like about 3% gap up, you can argue the fact that it actually underperformed the market throughout the day when the market ended up pretty much flat, while Tesla definitely, sold off a little bit more relative to where it opened, of course. Now, is this bad? Is Tesla, is it now bearish? Is it ready to finally crater back down? Or is it still actually holding up pretty well, right? Well, I think the answer here is it's actually holding up surprisingly, well, not surprisingly well, but it is holding up pretty well, honestly, pretty well. Now, it's going to be very volatile. I want to make this and preface this with something very, very clear. It's going to be a very volatile stock for like a few more days, at least, if not maybe for another week or two, right? It is going to be extremely, extremely volatile. So just, be really careful because, again, non-financial advice, just my opinion, it is going to be extremely volatile. So there could be massive swings happening, sometimes pretty damn quickly. So just, watch out for that. But nonetheless, let's talk about the daily chart first. The daily chart is looking pretty interesting. Why? Is because, well, again, like I said yesterday, right? And the day before that, we broke out. We went above this channel, which is obviously a really good sign to see. And so far, the past 2 days, we have been confirming this breakout from this channel, which again, remember I talked about the 325-ish level, it's been confirming that as a support so far. That's a good sign as long as that can continue happening and as long as Tesla can continue essentially having that 325-ish level as support. That should be a pretty good sign moving forward for Tesla, right? That should be a very good sign. Now, if that continues to be the case, where do I see it go next? Well, ultimately, the overall target I would see next is essentially making a fresh higher high at the very least to 365, 385, 400, and all-time highs at 415. Those are the 4 step up levels I would see moving forward for Tesla, essentially one step at a time. Break one, go to the next one, break one, go to the next one, and see if maybe one of them finally, shows some pretty decent resistance. So that's kind of the simplest way to look at it, right? Now, it's not perfect. Now, let me talk about the 1 hour really quickly. So remember yesterday, I actually deleted the Fibonacci. Remember the Fibonacci I showed yesterday that looked something, I think it was like this. Yeah, it was like this one here. Remember this Fibonacci that I made yesterday on yesterday's video? And I mentioned how if we do get a bounce, which I expect us to, how I expect it to go up to one of these 2 levels, being either the red line here, the 618 Fibonacci, or all the way up to the green lines over here, sitting at pretty much about 351, 352 range, which is that roughly 786 Fibonacci retracement level, kind of to the bearish side, if that makes sense, because you can argue the fact that Tesla had this massive fall and then it can get a small little retracement to this general range and then potentially make its way down further. That is still an option. So the reason I bring this up, despite me just saying how it's still technically bullish because it's holding those levels, is because Tesla, in my opinion, needs to break above this level, at the very least the high of today, but ideally it wants to break above the low 350s to remove these Fibonacci retracements from being a potential resistance point and a spot for the bears to so far successfully pounce on the stock, because that's what they did. We moved right up to that first level I talked about and the bears did pounce. The bears pounced and they moved us back down near the low of the day, right? So that's what you want to be watching out for. Now, the reason I say if this breaks above and we close above these levels and especially break the high over here at around 359, that's going to be really bullish because it takes away this bearish thesis essentially, which will be very good to see. Let me show you an example quickly with AMD, right? AMD is a stock I've been following, but this is a stock that has been extremely, extremely disappointing, right? But the reason this is important and the reason why I want to bring this up is because as an example, let's go to the 1 hour chart really quickly on AMD and you can see, all these other lines for now, right? I'm going to put your attention only to the Fibonacci retracement here, and you want to look at it like this, right? Same thing with AMD, just it's kind of flipped from what Tesla's doing, right? Tesla obviously, had a nice little top session and then came down and then went up into the Fibonacci. AMD is kind of doing the opposite on the 1 hour here, right? It came down, had a nice little rally, and then you wanted it to come back down into the Fibonacci, which it did. And you can see, if I look at it really closely, or if you look at it really closely, you can see around this general area, pretty much the same area I just talked about on Tesla, it held rather. It actually held and actually had a little bit of a bounce here, right? And this was a pretty important area for it to hold, but it didn't, right? It didn't. It ended up going bleeding right underneath it, and that's really, really bearish. And then to make it even worse, it actually closed the day below this range over here. So as far as I'm aware, this stock wants to continue bleeding, right? But the reason I bring this up is just to show you the kind of opposite example of how it can look like, in this case, obviously to the downside, but you can see what happened when the bulls tried to step in, and they definitely stepped in right here, but they couldn't step in overall enough to really maintain and hold the stock up. Now, I don't want to make this about AMD, of course, but that's just to illustrate the kind of inverse effect, if you will, that Tesla is currently facing, but the bears now have the opportunity to potentially pounce on the stock, while the bulls essentially want to, well, break above this and break out of this range, right? That's what the bulls want to do, to really set up a move, like to really, really go higher, because for now, there's a chance that we just essentially get range bound within this range and we don't go too much higher, really, right? So just, watch for that. And the longer we take, the more opportunity the bears can pounce the stock overall lower. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make here is watch for that. Now, also on the 1 hour, the market bias you can see here has finally caught up to the stock, and it has now, of course, acted, well, as a support. So that's always a good sign as well. So as long as this can continue acting as a support for the stock, I see no reason to be bearish on Tesla stock. And again, it pretty much comes down to about that 325-ish level. As long as Tesla, in my eyes, can hold about that 325 level, which of course is that level on the daily chart, which is that Fibonacci or the channel breakout and the horizontal resistance, as long as that holds. And on top of that, it's also going to be that 1 hour market bias support. As long as that range holds, I think Tesla's bullish, and I think it wants to move up higher ultimately. And again, the main thing to watch out for is going to be these levels up here in the high 340s, we'll say, to the very low 350s. Watch for that general range. Watch for the bulls to try and get blast past this overall range. And then I think Tesla can finally make its way ultimately even higher than it recently has put in a high. So watch for those kind of levels. Now, obviously, let's talk about the flip side. Let's talk about the bearish side. Let's say we don't go above those levels, or even worse, let's say we actually finally start closing candles, not just going below, but closing a daily candle below about that 325 level. But to really make it even more simple, honestly, closing below yesterday's or today's low, which is closer to like 322, 323 range, if you want like a little bit more leniency, if you will, right? Because it's very volatile. Closing a daily candle below that range would be pretty bearish. And I think that at the very least, Tesla will make its way most likely, probably pretty quickly, might even be within the same day, down to $300 per share, right? That's where I think that'll happen. And of course, if $300 per share does not hold, I expect Tesla to overall make its way to my personal main target, where I get very excited once again. Again, whether or not we come there, I don't know, right? I'm not saying we absolutely will or we absolutely won't. Nobody knows. That's why you have those levels to kind of dictate it for you, because if one level snaps, you probably go down to the next one and vice versa to the upside. But overall, to me, 280s to as low as about 265, that 15-ish dollar range is the sweet spot. That to me is the sweet spot. That is where I will get very excited once again. That is where most likely the market bias will start slowly making its way back up to it and meet it somewhere in the middle over here. And that's where I personally think Tesla will get very, very enticing to me personally, once again, to go much more aggressively on the stock. And again, I want to make it clear, even if it does come all the way down there, and even if Tesla makes its way down to about that 270-ish, we'll just say range, I still view it as very, very bullish, right? I still view the stock extremely bullish, because that's just simply taking this area right over here and pretty much turning it into, well, a support, right? It's really just that simple. I'm gonna take this out for now. It's too many lines. It's getting annoying. Essentially, again, the weekly chart will just be essentially taking us right back to this massive area that was a massive resistance and essentially turning it into support. If that confirmation can happen, and if Tesla can turn that back into support, I see no reason why it wouldn't at the very least go up to the same high it just recently did, or even higher than that, maybe in December or something like that. So anyway, that's kind of how I'm eyeballing it right now moving forward on Tesla. And that's pretty much the main thing I'm eyeballing ultimately. Now, one thing I do want to mention on the daily chart, even the weekly chart, is you might see some numbers over here, right? You see a little 2 up here. Sometimes you see a 1 over here or a 1 over here. You might be wondering, what does that mean? Because it's been doing a pretty good job at predicting the bottoms and the tops. Right now, it's not perfect. Right here, for instance, it said this is a topping area, but Tesla was obviously squeezing, and we went much higher. But if I go into the previous instances, you can see it's not perfect. It's not perfect by any means, but it's pretty good. It's not bad, right? It's not bad. At the very least, it does show a warning sign for the most part. If it's not like perfect at timing the top, it does say that maybe momentum is either slowing down for the bullish or bearish side. this essentially is a divergence, right? This is a divergence, right? This indicator just pretty much signals divergences, right? Bearish, bullish divergences, hidden bullish, or hidden bearish divergences, any combination of the two, it pretty much shows it up here. So right now what it's showing is a bearish divergence is setting up. And you can see the number 2 implies how many different divergences are set up. This indicator actually has a lot of oscillators essentially built in, like stochastic RSI, OBV, etc. Has all these indicators built in, and you can actually make it tell you which one you want to show. But essentially it's saying that of that list, currently 2 of them are showing a bearish divergence, which is obviously doesn't mean it's a topping signal necessarily, but it does mean that, hey, you might want to be a little bit careful around here. There's some toppy signals starting to form, so watch out. So, take that as you will. And then, of course, that did show up over here. So let's see how accurate that ends up being. But ladies and gentlemen, that's all I got for you today. Let me know what you think down below. Actually, very quickly, let's take a look at options flow very, very quickly over here. In terms of the most bullish flow, Tesla is a 60 million bullish flow, which is, of course, pretty bullish. Now, if we go to the chatter flow, you can see towards the end of the day, about 12 million, almost 12 million worth of SPY puts, SPX puts came in above the ask December 20th, with PPI coming out tomorrow. Though, with that being said, Tesla did close out with a 1.1 million bullish call option flow expiring in 2 days. So some whales are bullish or bearish on the market, but clearly some whales seems to be bullish at the very least on a gap up for Tesla. Maybe it's not necessarily a massive run up, but at the very least, it seems like a gap up for Tesla is what this whale is clearly betting on. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, the bulls are still in control regardless in the options flow. But yeah, let me know what you think down below. Thank you so much for watching. See you for the next one. Peace.